death toll from the devastating earthquake in Italy continues to rise. A new framework to combat malaria is adopted by 47 African nations. Alternative rites of passage for girls are introduced in Kenya to fight female genital mutilation. Africa 54 starts right now. Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. The death toll from a devastating earthquake that struck into Italy on Wednesday has climbed to at least 247 people. Search and rescue teams sifting through the ruins in the quake-hit area on Thursday are finding it more difficult to find survivors with each passing hour. The magnitude 6.2 earthquake struck the region just after 3:30 a.m. local time, with the epicenter about 10 kilometers southeast of the town of Norcia. The hardest hit areas included the towns of Amatrice and Accumoli, which were largely reduced to rubble. Italy's Civil Protection Agency confirmed that 53 of the dead were in Amatrice and that some 150 people are still unaccounted for. Prime Minister Matteo Renzi traveled by helicopter to the affected areas to meet rescue volunteers. A local fire department official says the chances of finding people alive are diminishing as conditions are extremely challenging.
We're still using sniffer dogs units as the starting point in the search and rescue operations, and we're putting everything we have out in the field in order to continue the search operations. All the information is shared and communicated between the different teams. We're still working towards finding as many people as possible alive.
Rescue workers are painstakingly removing rubble piece by piece in the hope of finding more survivors. Now, Lorenzo... Okay, we don't have that one. Now, aerial video taken by drones showed suites of Amatrice last year, voted one of Italy's most beautiful historic towns, destroyed. For the latest on the search and rescue mission in Italy, journalist Giovanni Sorrentino joins us live via Skype from Rome. Good evening, Giovanni.
Good evening.
All right. The question first I want to ask is, the numbers seem to be rising really fast. What is the estimated population that, we can think about as we think about the devastation in this area?
Well, it's hard to say because usually these villages have not high population. But in this period of the year, it is still a holiday period here in Italy, there were more inhabitants, because part of the people were there only temporary, because they were visiting relatives or because they had their second house there, and also because next Sunday there was supposed to be a huge and important celebration in Amatrice about a particular kind of pasta dish that everybody knows here in Italy. And they were going to do this big celebration, and there were hosts in some of the hostels and hotels over there.
Now, Giovanni, you're familiar with this particular region. Tell us what is unique. It looks like, it is special. It was considered one of the best places to visit in the world.
Well, it is, this is the good part and the bad part, because Italy has lots of these beautiful villages. Most of them are medieval, and they're very nice to see, to visit. Most of them are also UNESCO heritage. And on the other hand, it's 60% of Italian territory is in earthquake danger. These Amatrice and Accumuli in a scale of danger where danger number 1, which is the highest. So on a way, there are beautiful places, very well preserved, but on the other hand, there are highest risk of collapsing when something like this occurred.
Now, there were concerns that some of the buildings are still collapsing. How has it been for the rescue teams? Are they impeded from getting closer to some of those regions?
Well, they're not impeded, but I have to say a strong aftershock jolted the Italian town of Amatrice just a couple of hours ago. And so rescue operations are even more difficult. Of course, they don't stop, but they have to take care also to journalists, for example. There are a lot of journalists over there. They have to take care of local people who are trying to take something from their homes. I mean, they are not stopping for sure rescue operations, but I have to say they are more and more difficult.
And now we know that it is not extremely far from Rome, but are you finding that there's so many people perhaps who live in Rome that are affected in some way by that earthquake?
Actually, I was jumped off the bed by the earthquake because it was very scary. It was at night and the bed was shaking very hardly. And we stayed all night awakened, and all the people I know here in Rome experienced the same thing. It was very strong, and we were very worried because we realized that something was going on, something more serious was going on somewhere not far from here.
Oh.
I mean, memory ran to the event in L'Aquila in 2009. It was very similar. We felt something very strong here in Rome at night. We didn't know where it happened. And just after a few hours, we realized that there was something serious going on in L'Aquila.
All right,
the same happened here.
Giovanni, thank you very much. Thank you for reporting. That's a journalist, Giovanni Sorrentino, reporting live via Skype from Rome. Now, turning to Afghanistan, police say at least 10 people were killed and more than 37 wounded after a nearly 10-hour-long attack on the American University of Afghanistan in Kabul ended Thursday. The attack began with an explosion Wednesday evening and set off about an hour of gunfire. Security forces responded. Kabul Police Chief Abdul Rahman Rahimi says more than 700 staff and students were rescued after being trapped inside the university complex. One student described how they evaded being discovered by the attackers.
The insurgents threw hand grenades at us, but we covered ourselves under the desks in order to save ourselves from shrapnel. Then we all jumped down from the window of the second floor and escaped.
Well, police say at least 2 of the attackers were killed. A Pentagon spokesman told VOA that a small number of U.S. advisors assisted their Afghan counterparts in dealing with the attack. At this time, there are no claims of responsibility from any extremist groups. The U.S. State Department condemned the violence and called it an attack on the future of Afghanistan. Now, Burundi could scrape presidential term limits from its constitution. A commission set up to hear public views on governance says most citizens wanted no curbs on the number of times a head of state may seek re-election. The Central African nation has been gripped by violence for more than a year, triggered by President Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to seek a third term. Opponents say the decision made in April 2015 violated the constitution, which currently limits presidential tenure to 2 5-year terms. The chairman of the commission set up by Nkurunziza last year to collect public opinion on Burundi's political systems says that most Burundians wanted term limits abolished. Burundi would be the latest in a growing list of African countries where term limits have been abolished, or someone is trying to abolish them. Now, for more on Burundi politics, journalist Moses Havyarimana joins me by phone from Bujumbura. Good evening, Moses.
Yeah, good evening, Vincent.
Now, what has been the reaction first of the opposition to these findings of the commission?
Well, we understand that most of the opposition leaders have rejected these findings. They said that these are not the views of the real Burundians, and they said that actually the commission was formed by the president himself in his own mandate to accomplish some mission, and that the commission has accomplished its mission actually to favor the president, his views and his supporters on what he may be wanting, and this is what he wanted about the situation whereby he can amend the constitution.
Mm-hmm. Now, we know that there is a constitution, and people are saying, stick with the constitution. This was the cause of problems from the beginning. Is there any plan of having like a referendum on that particular clause of the constitution on term limits?
Actually, this one was one of the major issues the opposition raised to at least make a referendum, because they said the commission itself, they don't trust the commission since it was formed by the president himself. They said the commission never even approached the opposition to dialogue with them. It went and followed by the ruling party supporters and those who support President Pierre Nkurunziza. So in the press conference by the chairman of the commission, he said that he couldn't be able to travel outside the country to meet all the opposition leaders, but said he will meet them in the 6 months after being renewed. It's the commission's mandate, which the opposition said that the commission wouldn't have released the report if they haven't yet met to actually share the views also as the opposition leaders in the country.
Now, first, why did the president actually appoint a commission to look into that? Who wanted to find out whether citizens want term limits abolished?
The president says actually the Burundians have got the great contribution to their peace, and they have to contribute. Each Burundian have to contribute. So this commission have been carrying out its activities since the beginning of the year and traveling to the countryside all over the country, and also has been invited in some time in the Arusha negotiation to also take part in the place. But however, the opposition we didn't agree with this. Actually, the commission saying that it was biased, though it is composed of the civil society organizations, some opposition leaders, and also the religious leaders.
Now, we're looking at some video which is depicting the violence that has been ongoing. How is the situation today in Burundi?
Well, Burundi is now experiencing a relatively calm. It's in the most especially in the capital, where the protests against President Pierre Nkurunziza have been happening. It's a little bit of calm, but however, there are some ongoing arrests of some civilians and some individuals who have been targeted and arrested. We understand that there are some more than 50 people were arrested last week in a bar after being accused of sharing messages on social media which could threaten the country's security. So we find that this have been going on, and also targeted killings have continued in the country, though the country now is experiencing a relative calmness.
All right, Moses. Thank you very much. That's Moses Abiyarimana reporting from Bujumbura. Now, elsewhere in Central Africa, a general strike is underway in the Democratic Republic of Congo as opponents of President Joseph Kabila call for him to step down when his mandate expires in December. Stalls in the central market were closed and the heart of the city remained quiet, although some people did open their businesses. In the surrounding suburbs, especially opposition strongholds, citizens stayed at home and shops were boarded up. Kabila's opponents accuse him of dragging his feet on holding the election in order to cling to power in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country that has not seen a peaceful change of government since independence from Belgium in 1960. Now, Libyan forces continue the push to oust Islamic State from its former stronghold of Sirte. Islamic State took control of Sirte last year, setting up a proto-state modeled on its practices in Iraq and Syria and enforcing its ultra-hardline rule on residents. The forces, mainly brigades from the city of Misrata, say they have prepared for what some in the military described as the decisive battle to oust Islamic State. They say they are close to capturing Sirte after taking most of the city in a 3-month campaign and restricting militants to a shrinking residential area in the city center. Since August 1st, they have been supported by U.S. airstrikes. The United States is carrying out airstrikes against Islamic State positions in the city, a move that has accelerated the process of Libyan forces whose advance had been slowed by suicide bombing, snipers, and mines. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, a new framework to combat malaria is adopted by most African countries. Stay with us.
And technology, here's what's new. What's new? The 25th anniversary of the World Wide Web, Internet Day. On the 23rd of August, 1991, World Wide Web creator Tim Berners-Lee opened the web to the public, allowing anyone with even limited computer knowledge to roam the internet, clicking on those blue hyperlinks. 28-year-old Andrew Palczewski is one of VOA's technology gurus.
In just 25 years, we've gone from a world where the internet didn't exist to one where it's in every facet of our lives, from education to commerce to entertainment. And you have a whole generation of people, myself included, who really don't remember a world without the internet.
Estimates are at least 3.4 billion people are surfing over 1 billion websites on the internet. Humans tweet 7,300 times a second. We search for 56,000 items per second on Google. We send 2.5 million emails per second. Searching for cats on Google will get you 680 million hits. Hope you had a happy Internet Day. For VOA's What's New, I'm Todd Grosson.
Well, it's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with some new information on malaria. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. All 47 World Health Organization member states in the African region have unanimously adopted a new malaria framework for Africa. The new framework proposes specific priority interventions and actions to reach, quote, an African region free of malaria. WHO experts say that since 2000, malaria death rates have plunged by 66%, translating into 6.2 million lives saved. The WHO says malaria is no longer the leading cause of death among children in sub-Saharan Africa. But despite the significant progress, malaria continues to be a major health and development problem in Africa. At least 89% of the global burden of malaria is in sub-Saharan Africa, and most victims are children under the age of 5. The World Health Organization says $66 billion will be needed to eliminate the disease from Africa by 2030. Joining us now on the phone from Geneva, Switzerland, is Dr. Pedro Alonso, Director of the World Health Organization's Global Malaria Program. Dr. Alonso, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, the new malaria framework proposes a specific priority interventions and action. What are some of the key priorities?
Well, I think you framed the question very well in your introduction. We have witnessed over the last decade a golden era in the fight against malaria with amazing, or rather historical and unprecedented progress, with very significant reductions, well in excess of 60% in mortality rates, incidence rates, and so great progress. But as you rightly also said, although malaria is no longer the leading cause of death, the number one cause of death, it still represents a massive burden on the health of the African continent, and particularly of its under 5 children, with close to 400,000 deaths every year. So not the leading cause of death, but a major cause of death and disability. Now, what has brought us all the way to where we are now? Well, the deployment, the scale-up in our core key malaria interventions, fighting the vector, essentially through the use of insecticide-treated bed nets, under which children and women, pregnant women, sleep, and that prevents them from getting infected. The scale-up in the deployment of rapid diagnostic tests, allowing adequate diagnosis even in the most remote areas, and access to artemisinin combination therapy, our first-line treatment, drugs for the treatment of malaria. What needs to be done is continue aggressively in the scale-up of our core interventions, because still today, well in excess of a quarter of all Africans do not sleep under an impregnated bed net. Still, in excess of 50% of all malaria cases go undiagnosed and untreated. So our challenge is, how do we vigorously go on scaling up our interventions to achieve the ambitious but achievable goals that the African framework poses.
Very ambitious indeed. And Dr. Alonso, the WHO says that annual funding for malaria will need to triple over the next years to achieve the 2030 target. Some critics say that donor money will not be enough, and African countries that are endemic are not funding and giving out the money that is needed. So where will the money come from?
From all of us. You're right. We do need, and we've witnessed with great satisfaction and encouragement the development of global funding mechanisms like the Global Fund to fight malaria, TB, and HIV. The bilateral initiatives like the U.S. President's malaria initiative, they've brought in, together with other key funders, major resources in the fight against malaria. But if we want to go on scaling up, if we want to go beyond our current level, extra resources will be required. And this should continue to be coming from our international effort, the international cooperation expressed through the different mechanisms. But we need to, and the countries need to increase the domestic resources devoted to the fight against malaria. Tripling the funding will not come only from a sustained effort from our international partners, but requires more funding from the countries.
We have to leave it there, Dr. Alonso. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And that was Dr. Pedro Alonso. He is director of the World Health Organization's Global Malaria Program. Now, a new release report details the damage of Zika infections on the developing brain goes well beyond microcephaly. The latest research draws from imaging and autopsy findings linked with confirmed Zika infections done on 17 infants and fetuses in northeastern Brazil and 28 fetuses or newborns with brain anomalies whose mothers were suspected of having Zika during pregnancy. Nearly all babies in each group had a ventriculomegaly, a condition in which the ventricles or fluid-filled spaces in the brain are enlarged. While most of the fetuses had abnormally small head circumference, suggesting they had microcephaly, 3 of the fetuses had normal head circumference but severe ventriculomegaly. The research was published in the journal Radiology. Experts from the World Health Organization warned that a shortage of HIV testing could undermine global efforts to diagnose and treat people with the infection. They looked at responses to annual surveys that the WHO had sent to 127 countries between 2012 and 2014. The survey asked about capacity and usage of blood tests that check HIV status and health. They found worrying gaps in provision despite some improvements. Reasons for the gaps in provision including lack of reagents, equipment not being installed or maintained properly, and inadequate or absent staff training. Private sector testing was not evaluated in the survey. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore, and be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Alternative rites of passage for girls are introduced in Kenya to fight female genital mutilation. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In South Sudan, about 1,000 people displaced by the civil war are being relocated from Tamping to the UN House, a civilian protection site. In Ethiopia, Olympian Faiza Lelisa's family warns against his return after he made an anti-government gesture at the Rio Summer Olympic Games. In Nigeria, UNICEF warns of humanitarian disaster around the Lake Chad region caused by the insurgency and subsequent retreat of Boko Haram. In Libya, after a 3-month-long campaign, forces say they are close to recapturing all of Sirte from the Islamic State group. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Now, communities in southern Kenya are slowly embracing special ceremonies for girls known as alternative rites of passage of female, that is against female genital mutilation. Lenny Rovaga takes us to one such event.
This is Oloitoktok in Kajiado County in southern Kenya. Today, around 400 Maasai girls are undergoing a ceremony to mark their transition from girls to women. This cultural rite of passage used to involve female genital mutilation. But today, the girls are getting a special blessing from the elders. It is known as Alternative Rite of Passage, or ARP.
I'm happy because I have undergone ARP and I have not undergone FMG because it causes a lot of diseases and a girl may die. And also, I'm wonderful because we have told our parents the bad effects of FMG and now they have left it.
In Kenya, FGM is illegal, but the practice continues. Lasarian Katau worked as a female circumciser for more than 20 years. She says she cut around 200 girls. Today, she is an avid advocate of ARP. She leads the girls in 2 days of classes on the lessons in womanhood.
Some of the elders have not embraced alternative rites of passage, and you know they are the decision makers, so that's a major challenge. But in our village, we have embraced it because of information and education.
ARPs started in Kenya 7 years ago, but an estimated 100,000 girls still undergo FGM in Kenya each year. Nice Nailante, a fellow from U.S. President Barack Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative, is a global ARP ambassador for the Nairobi-based non-profit UMREF Health Africa. She herself escaped FGM at the age of 8.
We should invest in education because all these harmful traditional practices, female genital mutilation, early marriages, teenage pregnancies, if we are not educating our girls, if we are not investing in education, they will never end. But once we realize that there is an importance of educating our girls, the same as educating our boys, that is when as a community we will be able to move forward.
At the end of the ceremony, the girls are presented with certificates, proof of their transition. For girls such as Sabina, ARP is one step to leveling the playing field and ensuring girls get equal opportunity to succeed. Lenny Rovaga for VOA News, Oloitoktok, Kenya.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Here is a story that has to do with defects or problems with cars.
Listen for the word that means to take back something. Recall.
They had meetings over this defect. They shared complaints over this defect. Yet there was no investigation by the government and no recall by General Motors until 10 years later.
Recall. It is a word that means to ask people officially to return something.
In our story, there were major problems with some General Motors cars. The man says the U.S. government and the car company took too long to issue a recall, so the cars could be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word recall, your American English will be good enough to know what this news word means.